The Human Cycle by Sri Aurobindo. Chapter 19. The Curve of the Rational Age. The first natural result has been the transition of the rational mind from democratic individualism to democratic socialism. Socialism, laboring under the disadvantageous accident of its birth in a revolt against capitalism, an uprising against the rule of the successful bourgeois and the plutocrat, has been compelled to work itself out by a war of classes. And worse still, it has started from an industrialized social system and itself taken on, at the beginning, a purely industrial and economic appearance. These are accidents that disfigure its true nature. Its true nature, its real justification, is the attempt of the human reason to carry on the rational ordering of society to its fulfillment, its will to get rid of this great parasitical excrescence of unbridled competition, this giant obstacle to any decent ideal or practice of human living. Socialism sets out to replace a system of organized economic battle by an organized order and peace. This can no longer be done on the old lines. An artificial or inherited inequality brought about by the denial of equal opportunity and justified by the affirmation of that injustice and its result as an eternal law of society and of nature. That is a falsehood, which the reason of man will no longer permit. Neither can it be done, it seems, on the basis of individual liberty, for that has broken down in the practice. Socialism, therefore, must do away with the democratic basis of individual liberty, even if it professes to respect it, or to be the marching towards a more rational freedom. It shifts at first the fundamental emphasis to other ideas and fruits of the democratic ideal, and it leads by this transference of stress to a radical change in the basic principle of a rational society. Equality, not a political only, but a perfect social equality, is to be the basis. There is to be equality of opportunity for all, but also equality of status for all. For without the last, the first cannot be secured. Even if it were established, it could not endure. This equality again is impossible if personal or at least inherited right in property is to exist. And therefore socialism abolishes, except at best on a small scale, the right of personal property, as it is now understood, and makes war on the hereditary principle. Who, then, is to possess the property? It can only be the community as a whole. And who is to administer it? Again, the community as a whole. In order to justify this idea, the socialistic principle has practically to deny the existence of the individual, or his right to exist, except as a member of the society and for its sake. He belongs entirely to the society, not only his property, but himself, his labor, his capacities, the education it gives him and its results, his mind, his knowledge, his individual life, his family life, the life of his children. Moreover, Since his individual reason cannot be trusted to work out naturally a right and rational adjustment of his life with the life of others, it is for the reason of the whole community to arrange that too for him. Not the reasoning minds and wills of the individuals, but the collective reasoning mind and will of the community has to govern. It is this which will determine not only the principles and all the details of the economic and political order, but the whole life of the community, and of the individual as a working, thinking, feeling cell of this life, the development of his capacities, his actions, the use of the knowledge he has acquired, the whole ordering of his vital, his ethical, his intelligent being. For so only can the collective reason and intelligent will of the race overcome the egoism of individualistic life and bring about a perfect principle and rational order of society in a harmonious world. It is true that this inevitable character of socialism is denied or minimized by the more democratic socialists, for the socialistic mind still bears the impress of the old democratic ideas, and cherishes hopes that betray it often into strange illogicalities. It assures us that it will combine some kind of individual freedom, a limited but all the more true and rational freedom, with the rigors of the collectivist idea. But it is evidently these rigors to which things must tend if the collectivist idea is to prevail, and not to stop short and falter in the middle of its course. If it proves itself thus wanting in logic and courage, it may well be that it will speedily, or in the end, be destroyed by the foreign element it tolerates, and perish without having sounded its own possibilities. It will pass, perhaps, unless guided by a rational wisdom, which the human mind in government has not yet shown, after exceeding even the competitive individualistic society in its cumbrous incompetence. Footnote 1. These hesitations of social democracy, its uneasy mental poise between two opposing principles, socialistic regimentation and democratic liberty, may be the root cause of the failure of socialism to make good in so many countries, even when it had every chance on its side, and its replacement by the more vigorous and ruthlessly logical forces of communism and fascism. On the other hand, in the northernmost countries of Europe, a temporizing, reformist, practical socialism, compromising between the right regulation of the communal life and the freedom of the individual, has, to some extent, made good. But it is still doubtful whether it will be allowed to go to the end of its road. If it has that chance, it is still to be seen whether the drive of the idea and the force it carries in it for complete self-effectuation will not prevail in the end over the spirit of compromise. Continuing. But even at its best, the collectivist idea contains several fallacies, inconsistent with the real facts of human life and nature. And just as the idea of individualistic democracy found itself before long in difficulties on that account, Because of the disparity between life's facts and the mind's idea, difficulties that have led up to its discredit and approaching overthrow, the idea of collectivist democracy, too, may well find itself before long in difficulties that must lead to its discredit and eventual replacement by a third stage of the inevitable progression. Liberty, protected by a state in which all are politically equal, was the idea that individualistic democracy attempted to elaborate. Equality, social and political equality, enforced through a perfect and careful order by a state which is the organized will of the whole community, is the idea on which socialistic democracy stakes its future. If that too fails to make good, the rational and democratic idea may fall back upon a third form of society, founding an essential rather than formal liberty and equality upon fraternal comradeship in a free community, the ideal of intellectual as of spiritual anarchism. And there's a second footnote. In the theory of communism, state socialism is only a passage. A free, classless, stateless communal life is the eventual ideal. But it is not likely that the living state machine, once in power with all that are interested in its maintenance, would let go its prey or allow itself to be abolished without a struggle. In fact, the claim to equality, like the thirst for liberty, is individualistic in its origin. It is not native or indispensable to the essence of the collectivist ideal. It is the individual who demands liberty for himself, a free movement for his mind, life, will, action. The collectivist trend and the state idea have rather the opposite tendency. They are self-compelled to take up more and more the compulsory management and control of the mind, life, will, action of the community, and the individuals as part of it, until personal liberty is pressed out of existence. But similarly, it is the individual who demands for himself equality with all others. When a class demands, it is still the individual multiplied, claiming for himself and all who are of his own grade, political or economic status, an equal place, privilege, or opportunity with those who have acquired or inherited a superiority of status. The social reason conceded first the claim to liberty, but in practice, whatever might have been the theory, it admitted only so much equality. Equality before the law, a helpful but not too effective political equality of the vote, as was necessary to ensure a reasonable freedom for all. Afterwards, when the injustices and irrationalities of an unequalized, competitive freedom, the enormity of the gulfs it created, became apparent, the social reason shifted its ground and tried to arrive at a more complete communal justice on the basis of a political, economic, educational, and social equality as complete as might be. It has labored to make a plain level on which all can stand together. Liberty in this change has had to undergo the former fate of equality. For only so much liberty, perhaps or for a time, could survive, as can be safely allowed without the competitive individual getting enough room for his self-assertive growth to upset or endanger the equalitarian basis. But in the end, the discovery cannot fail to be made that an artificial equality has also its irrationalities, its contradictions of the collective good, its injustices even, and its costly violations of the truth of nature. Equality, like individualistic liberty, may turn out to be not a panacea, but an obstacle in the way of the best management and control of life by the collective reason and will of the community. But if both equality and liberty disappear from the human scene, there is left only one member of the democratic trinity, brotherhood, or, as it is now called, comradeship, that has some chance of survival as part of the social basis. This is because it seems to square better with the spirit of collectivism. We see accordingly the idea of it, if not the fact, still insisted on in the new social systems, even those in which both liberty and equality are discarded as noxious democratic chimeras. But comradeship without liberty and equality can be nothing more than the like association of all individuals, functional classes, guilds, syndicates, soviets, or any other units in common service to the life of the nation under the absolute control of the collectivist state. The only liberty left at the end would be the freedom to serve the community under the rigorous direction of the state authority. The only equality would be an association of all alike in a Spartan or Roman spirit of civic service, with perhaps a like status, theoretically equal at least for all functions. The only brotherhood would be the sense of comradeship in devoted dedication to the organized social self, the state. In fact, the democratic trinity, stripped of its godhead, would fade out of existence. The collectivist ideal can very well do without them, for none of them belong to its grain and very substance. This is indeed already the spirit, the social reason, or rather the social gospel, of the totalitarianism whose swelling tide threatens to engulf all Europe, and more than Europe. Totalitarianism of some kind seems indeed to be the natural, almost inevitable destiny, at any rate the extreme and fullest outcome of socialism, or more generally of the collectivist idea and impulse. For the essence of socialism, its justifying ideal, is the governance and strict organization of the total life of society as a whole, and in detail by its own conscious reason and will for the best good and common interest of all, eliminating exploitation by individual or class, removing internal competition, haphazard confusion and waste, enforcing and perfecting coordination, assuring the best functioning and a sufficient life for all. If a democratic polity and machinery best assure such a working, as was thought at first, it is this that will be chosen, and the result will be social democracy. That ideal still holds sway in Northern Europe, and it may there yet have a chance of proving that a successful collectivist rationalization of society is quite possible. But if a non-democratic polity and machinery are found to serve the purpose better, then there is nothing inherently sacrosanct for the collectivist mind in the democratic ideal. It can be thrown on the rubbish heap where so many other exploded sanctities have gone. Russian communism, so discarded with contempt democratic liberty, and attempted for a time to substitute for the democratic machine a new Sovietic structure, but it has preserved the ideal of a proletarian equality for all in a classless society. Still, its spirit is a rigorous totalitarianism on the basis of the, in quotes, dictatorship of the proletariat, end quotes, which amounts, in fact, to the dictatorship of the Communist Party in the name or on behalf of the proletariat. Non-proletarian totalitarianism goes farther and discards democratic equality no less than democratic liberty. It preserves classes. For a time only, it may be, but as a means of social functioning, not as a scale of superiority or hierarchic order. Rationalism is no longer the turn. Its place is taken by a revolutionary mysticism, which seems to be the present drive of the time spirit. This is a symptom that can have a considerable significance. In Russia, the Marxist system of socialism has been turned almost into a gospel. Originally, a rationalistic system worked out by a logical thinker and discoverer and systematizer of ideas, it has been transformed by the peculiar turn of the Russian mind into something like a social religion, a collectivist mystique, an inviolable body of doctrines, with all denial or departure treated as a punishable heresy, a social cult enforced by the intolerant piety and enthusiasm of a converted people. In fascist countries, the swing away from rationalism is marked and open. A surface vital subjectivism has taken its place, and it is in the name of the national soul and its self-expression and manifestation that the leaders and prophets teach and violently enforce their totalitarian mystique. The essential features are the same in Russia and in fascist countries, so that to the idea of the outsider, their deadly quarrel seems to be a blood feud of kinsmen fighting for the inheritance of their slaughtered parents, democracy, and the age of reason. There is the seizure of the life of the community by a dominant individual leader, Führer, Dux, dictator, head of a small active minority, the Nazi, fascist, or communist party, and supported by a militarized partisan force. There is a rapid crystallization of the social, economic, political life of the people into a new rigid organization, effectively controlled at every point. There is the compulsory casting of thought, education, expression, action into a set iron mold, a fixed system of ideas and life motives, with a fierce and ruthless, often a sanguinary repression of all that denies and differs. There is a total, unprecedented compression of the whole communal existence, so as to compel a maximum efficiency and a complete unanimity of mind, speech, feeling, life. If this trend becomes universal, it is the end of the age of reason. The suicide or the execution, by decapitation or lethal pressure, peine forte et dure, of the rational and intellectual expansion of the human mental being. Reason cannot do its work, act or rule, if the mind of man is denied freedom to think or freedom to realize its thought by action in life. But neither can a subjective age be the outcome, for the growth of subjectivism also cannot proceed without plasticity, without movement of self-search, without room to move, expand, develop, change. The result is likely to be rather the creation of a tenebrous no man's land, where obscure mysticisms, materialistic, vitalistic, or mixed, clash and battle for the mastery of human life. But this consummation is not certain. Chaos and confusion still reign, and all hangs in the balance. Totalitarian mysticism may not be able to carry out its menace of occupying the globe, may not even endure. Spaces of the earth may be left where a rational idealism can still survive. The terrible compression now exercised on the national mind and life may lead to an explosion from within, or, on the other hand, having fulfilled its immediate aim, may relax and give way in calmer times to a greater plasticity, which will restore to the human mind or soul a more natural line of progress, a freer field for their self-expanding impulse. In that case, the curve of the age of reason, now threatened with an abrupt cessation, may prolong and complete itself. The subjective turn of the human mind and life, avoiding a premature plunge into any general external action before it has found itself, may have time and freedom to evolve, to seek out its own truth, its own lines, and so become ready to take up the spiral of the human social evolution, where the curve of the age of reason naturally ends by its own normal evolution, and make ready the ways of a deeper spirit.